Welcome to the Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share that passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with a Latina perspective. Welcome to Season 8, where we will talk all things corporate and higher education. I'm so excited to share these powerful stories. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hola, today I'm talking with hoop-wearing, award-winning, stereotype-defying attorney and wealth mentor Carmen Rosas. She is on a mission to help women secure the bag. With more than 10 years of experience in wealth planning, she uses her knowledge to help other women build generational wealth. As CEO of EmpowHER Yourself and founder of Carmen Rosas Law, she empowers women to take control of their money and peace of mind. Carmen's unique approach to legacy planning blends intuitive coaching with legal and financial advice. She has been featured in Huff Post, Forbes, Create and Cultivate, BeLatina, Supermamas, and more, where she shares her insight with women around the globe. This is a good one, so please enjoy our conversation. Hey, I am so excited to be talking with you today. I met Carmen at a retreat that we were both at a few months ago, and we just kind of hit it off. We hung out, we shared our stories, and I am so excited to have you on the podcast today so that my audience can hear about the amazing person that you are. But before we get too much into it, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Karina. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Carmen Rosas. I am an estate planning attorney and financial empowerment advocate, and I've been practicing law about 11 years. And as part of my story, right? But as I'm the first in my family to graduate from college, and I'm the only attorney in my family. And so it's been quite a journey to get to where I'm at today, and I'm really excited to share that today.
I know that we talked about your story and what brought you to where you are today when we were in person, and I have been following along on Instagram and social media, but I'd love to hear your story because I think it is so relatable and it's so powerful. So what did bring you to the space that you're in today?
So that's a great question. And I think one of the things that I get asked all the time is, did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer? And my answer is no, absolutely not. When I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. I think it was because I just wanted to tell people what to do. To be honest, I wanted to feel like I was bossing them around. Um, but then my dad was like, there's no money in teaching, right? So my dad is from Mexico, from Guanajuato, and my mom is born here. She's French and Italian that we know of. But that's kind of, so I'm mixed. But growing up, I always identified with, the Mexican culture because we spent so much time with my dad, his family. And so they, emphasize being immigrants that education was key, right? You have to go to school, you have to do all the right things, and you have to follow the rules. And so from an early age, even probably kindergarten, I was following the rules. I was doing what I was told. And I didn't want to disappoint anyone, right? I just followed the rules. And I think so much of it was now as an adult, there's that part of me that wants to just rebel and do everything opposite of what, I know is right. But then my grown up self is chill out, relax. But so I always just kind of checked the boxes. And then when I was in high school, I was I'm going to become a CEO. I'm going to just run this big business. And I went to a private school. I was one of the affirmative action kids, I guess. But one of 10 minorities in a school of 400 in a very affluent area here in Silicon Valley in Atherton. And I just hung out with all the minority kids, right? I keep using air quotes, but that's really what we were. We were the minorities. All the brown and black kids hung out together in this little bench, and that's just kind of where we were. And it was so fascinating thinking about it because my brother and we're going through, anyways, kind of off topic, but we're cleaning out my dad's storage. So in my law practice, right, I do estate planning, preparing for death. And one of the things we keep telling my dad is Dad, you have 6 storage units. When you die, we're going to have to go through all of these because part of it, right, is his upbringing. He's not a hoarder, but I think he's a hoarder. Is he's organized hoarding? And so my brothers and I were going through, but we're looking at pictures, and my brother growing up, well, one, he's a boy, right? But two, he was blonde hair. Like he had blonde hair, like super bonito. And I like came out with like more olive skin, the darker hair. Like we don't even look like we're related. And actually have a great story about that. Fast forward. So when I was in after high school, I got it. I was the first in my family to go to college, right? So I'm like trying to figure out how we even apply. How do we get financial aid? Like, what does that even look like? And so I ended up at Santa Clara, where I went for undergrad. And then actually the two of my well, my brother followed there like 2 years later, and my cousin was a year after me. So basically, like literally paving the path for them to like go to the same school. But when I was in college, I joined a multicultural sorority, and my brother joined a more like white fraternity, right? So it was like all white boys. And I remember one time he invited me to a party that they were having, and so I get there, and I'm there with my sorority sisters who are all brown and black. And I was like, hey, my brother invited me to this party. And they're like, who's your brother? And I tell them, they're like, no way, that's not your brother. You're lying. And my brother's calling me and he's like, dude, where are you? And I was like, I'm outside. They won't let me in because they said I'm not related to you. So he came out like super upset. But I was like, this is the reality of it, right? And like we joke about these things, but I'm like, you had a very different upbringing than I did. We had the same parents, grew up in the same family, but you were basically born a white man and I was born a brown woman. And so I could go on and on about that. But so then Santa Clara, so I went to college. I went in as a business major because I was like, I'm going to be a CEO, go to business school, right? I hated every single class that I took, and I actually fell in love with anthropology. And for those of you listening who don't know what anthropology is, it's the study of different cultures. And I was just obsessed. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But then fast forward to like junior year, and I was like, oh, I need to get a job. Well, what am I what am I going to do with an anthropology degree? I just so happened to have studied the legal system. So we did comparative anthropology, where we studied the legal systems of tribes in New Zealand, so tribal kind of legal systems versus the US legal system. And I was like, oh, why not go to law school? I don't know anybody who's a lawyer. Nobody in my family's a lawyer. And so I was like, okay, great. So I graduated, went to law school, and I got a scholarship again to Ohio. And I'm from California, growing up in the Bay Area, very culturally diverse. Ohio, not so much. Law school, not so much. And so when I got there, I was like, where did I just like I felt like I literally was on a different planet. Like I was like, I have no idea who these people are. Luckily there was a girl from there. She was Vietnamese. She was from Sacramento. So a little, from California. And she's like, we definitely like connected and bonded because we were like, what are we doing here? These people, um, and so that's how I ended up in law school. And then after my first semester, I wanted to drop out. I wanted to do something more creative. I was like, oh, law school is going to be so boring. I don't want to do this. But then I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I was so concerned about disappointing my parents that I was like, I already did this. They expect me to finish. If I don't finish, like I'm a failure. And so I left Ohio, came back to California, and went to law school at night instead. Because I was like, at least I'm home. I was super homesick. I have like, people here. Law school sucks, but I'm going to get through it. And so I went to school at night, and then I worked full time, and then just paid my way through law school that way. And then I started my practice right after I passed the bar exam because I knew that if I ever wanted a family, I wasn't going to be able to put in like 80 plus hours of billable time. And yeah. And so so I did estate planning kind of right from the beginning because my grandmother passed away when I was in law school, or I was waiting for bar exam results. And my mom was the first time like us dealing with death in the family and dealing with like the legal system and what legal implications happen when you own property and assets and you can't actually transfer them because you don't have the right documents in place. And so because I had just graduated from law school, of course, right? Like I knew everything about it, but it was actually a great like deep dive into, I shouldn't even say deep dive, like I was thrown into the pool to figure it out. But it was really, really great to find out. And then I just kind of set my own personal mission to teach more people about it because I was like, there's so many people who come here as immigrants and their blood, sweat, and tears are put into buying this one piece of property. Maybe they get, they're fortunate enough to buy more than one or they have assets to pass on, but they lose it by the second generation because so much of it has to be sold off or given away to attorney's fees, court fees to transfer. And so I was like, wait, we need to get people to know more about this. And so I did estate planning. And then in 2016 is when I started my coaching business, which is Empower Yourself. And at that time, I was leaving an abusive relationship. From the outside looking in, I was a lawyer, I had my own business, super accomplished. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. And in 2016, I left my daughter's father after about 10 years with him, and really wanted to set out to financially empower women, because 94 to 99% of women that are in abusive relationships are subject to financial abuse. And so that could be, financial manipulation. It could be all kinds of things. And so I started my coaching with that in mind. And it's kind of evolved into more just financial empowerment and coaching for women, really getting women to think about the life that they're living and how they want to be remembered when they pass away. Um, and now I'm here. So I've been doing that since 2016, and it's been amazing. Yeah.
I think I was so enamored by everything that you are doing, because not only are you like taking the privileges that you had and um, like making a new path for your family, but you're also opening that up for other families to have that knowledge. I think a lot of immigrants, like you said, will strive for that American dream, have the house, be able to have their kids go to a higher ed school for a degree, but then like it stops there. And when we see what wealth is in this country, there have been uh, like the people that we see are wealthy have had generations upon generations upon generations like pour into that. And so we are starting like from the ground. And not only are we starting from step one, we're like having to learn and build at the same time, because like the economy and society is changing so quickly. And so I am just so inspired by what you're doing and how you're really leveraging social media, your networks, your voice, your story to then pour into other people. And so, does your family like think now? Do you have conversations about all that you're doing, and like especially with your brother?
Hmm. So, that's such a interesting question. So I've made comments here and there, right? Obviously not as direct as I could be, because part of it is you have to meet people where they're at, and you can educate them and you can voice your opinion. But I'm also not willing to like exert energy where I can place it elsewhere and like use my energy to uplift and empower women who are like in a similar situation. Like my brother was just born, right? Like, so it's not like he doesn't understand. But I think now, as I'm sharing more and more of my story, I'm asking more and more questions, because, right, talking about finances has been so taboo. Talking about DV and experiencing like intimate partner like abuse, like that's, taboo. Like there's just certain things that you're not supposed to talk about. And um as I've been sharing my story more vocally on social media, and my brother follows me, right? My parents follow me, they're able to see a different side of me other than like the little girl who just like did everything that she was supposed to. And I think for me, having a platform, like having social media and having places where I can go and speak, and, things like this, like, being on podcasts, has been super helpful in sharing my story and even healing, right? Like as I talk about it more, it may not be having direct conversations with them, um, but as I'm able to share, they understand a different part of me and different perspective, rather than me having a direct conversation with them and they feel attacked. Or if I'm just sharing my story, they're able to understand it a little bit better because I'm educating the masses, right? I'm educating a lot of people, not just quote unquote trying to educate them. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
How you answered it is exactly how I try to go about things as well. Because, like you said, we grow up trying not to disappoint our parents. And then when something happens that could possibly disappoint them, like if we were to try to bring it up, they take it as a personal attack because they're like, I did the best I could. It's not my fault. You made the choices. When And so I've learned how to be able to heal and talk about that through like therapy or like communal healing conversations, but also being able to craft it in a way that is accessible to the older generation, to know that we are like in real time trying to heal and trying to educate ourselves and trying to educate other people, and also just wanting them to understand things from our perspective, that we can hold space and be thankful for what they've done and understand that they did the best that they could in the time and space that they were doing it, but also us wanting to build upon that, to change things and to do things that are going to not just build a good foundation, like a way of living, but also emotionally a good foundation.
And you know what? Something that just came to me while you were talking is that, so growing up, right, like I went to private school. My dad like did whatever he needed to get us into private school. So my brother and I both went to private school for elementary school, and then I got into scholarship to go to the high school, the private high school near us. But it was funny because when I was getting my daughter ready to start school, I had her in that same private school that I was at for pre-kindergarten, and then COVID hit. And I was like, I'm going to choose not to pay for online school when the world is shut down, right? And so that was a big deal. My dad was like, well, why are you taking her out of there? Education is so important. And I said, okay, but like I have to teach her anyway. She's going to do kindergarten on Zoom. I'm going to be her teacher. Like, why am I going to pay somebody else when like the reality is the kid can't read yet and I'm going to have to do a lot of the legwork from home? And so he said, okay, fine, right? Like, and not that he really had a choice, but like for a long time, and even probably until the last couple years, his influence was, or his opinion, highly influenced my decisions. Even though I was healing, but my relationship with my dad is one that I've been working on extensively in therapy, and not, by any like fault of his, but it was just like what he knew, right? And how he raised us. And he did the best that he could. He was 19 when I was born. And so, I mean, I can't imagine having a kid at 19 and, not, doing something or like, having to focus on raising this human rather than like the rest of my life. But um, once COVID was kind of quote unquote over, right? But like the world opened back up, schools opened back up. I decided I wanted to actually put my daughter into a Spanish immersion school that was close by. It's a public school. And he was like, no, you need to put her in private school, better education, and I was like, Dad, but I really want her to learn Spanish. Like, I want her to be immersed in it. Like, I speak Spanish, it's broken. My dad never taught us, and part of that I think is because like he was teased, right, growing up, and so he was like, you guys are going to speak English, you're going to assimilate and be like these people, right, like be like the white people, and you're going to speak like them, and you're going to, just blend in. And I was like, there's no way like my brown self is going to just blend in. And so for him it was like education was so important, right, but that's all he knew, and I get it. But my daughter now speaks Spanish. Like, Spanish was probably her first language because I had her in a Spanish immersion daycare, right? But now she speaks better Spanish than I do. And it was funny because I was doing a presentation, my first presentation in Spanish, I think 2 weeks ago. And I was like, Mommy, if I say this, what does it mean? So it's been really great to kind of, like get her interpretation. And she's like, no, Mommy, that's not how you say it. Right. So it's a very different space now. But like my dad loves that she speaks Spanish to him, and she'll only speak Spanish to him. And so, not that I needed his kudos, but my daughter now is 8, right, and speaks 2 languages and is biliterate, right? So it's not only is she bilingual, but she can also read and write in Spanish and English. And so it's just been like amazing, but also like trust me to know that like I can make good decisions, that you raised me well enough to make good decisions, right? And then even one more other story that I wanted to share was when I was in high school, right? I was going to this very like affluent school, and I used to wear, so back when I was in high school, I had bangs, and I have like my hair is wavy, so they were like curly, and I would put gel in them and scrunch them, like that wet look. And I would wear my hoops all the time, and I would wear like not baggy pants, but they're like wide leg with like, and you would cut the slits on the side, right, to make sure they like go over your shoe. And my dad was like, if you're going to school with that like at this school you can't dress like that. So I went, he took me to like Hollister, I think it was like Aeropostale, I don't even know, Abercrombie and Fitch, and we got like these sweaters and like these skirts, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, what am I doing? Like, he's like, you have to dress like the rich white people that you're going to be in school with. And I got there and these kids had like holes in their clothes. Like, I was like, oh. I just was like, all right, well, first day of school, and I'm like in this ugly, gross sweater and uncomfortable skirt. And anyways, like my dad's perception of what wealth was, right? Like, and what he thought I should be wearing, um, or how I could fit in and assimilate. And then eventually I was like, screw this. And I was wearing my bright colors. I put my hoops back in, my hair was slicked back. And I was like, if they don't like me and they don't want to be my friend, fine. But we're in the same school and we're doing the same thing. So I just wanted to share that because I was thinking about when I was in high school and how much I always was trying to fit in.
I have a similar experience. My dad also took me clothes shopping after I graduated college, and he's like, "This is the look you need to have. Like, you can't be looking like a kid." And I'm just like, ugh. And now I dress how I want, and he can make comments, but yes, I don't. What is it with?
I don't know, but you don't have to share. So, okay, so maybe it was, I mean, I regret it anyways, but so back in, and it was like a healing moment, I think, back in, was it 2017? It was end of 2017. So I was like a year out of, not even a full year out of this relationship, right? So clearly still healing. I went and I shaved the back of my head, like just like underneath, like the under part, right? Like I shaved it. And I have a younger brother who he's 20 now, but he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cool." He's like, "Dad, did you see what sister did to her hair?" And he looked at me and granted, okay, I'm 31 years old, 32 years old, and I just decided to, but when you put my hair down, right, you couldn't see it. So I was like, "Oh, no big deal." He was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, he's like, you can't dress like that." He's like, "Once you're rich, then you can wear whatever you want and people can't say anything." And I was like, "Why can't I wear whatever I want now?" People still can't say, they can say what they want, but it's not going to affect me. So many like different things. Like so the other story I didn't share was when I was graduating from college, I had my nose pierced. I had piercings all right here in college, right? I was like one of those girls that just was like, never called her parents. Like I was like, I'm free. I'm out of the house. I had piercings, my tongue pierced, my nose pierced. And we met with a family friend right before I was going to law school. And she was like, lawyers don't dress like that. You have to take out all of your piercings. You have to take out like everything, because they're going to look at you crazy, right? Well, they're going to look at me crazy anyways, because I was going to Ohio and I was like the only brown person in the school. But so I took all my piercings out. Like I regret them now. Like I regret it now. I have like maybe one here, but now I feel like my body just doesn't heal after it's been like poked so many times. So now it gets all weird. But and then I have tattoos, and I have visible tattoos, right? I have one here, I have like some on my arms. And the first tattoo I got, my dad was like, "Why don't you just put stupid on your forehead?" And I was like, oh my God. But so many things where it's like your appearance is so like important, right? Or he's like, you need to speak proper English. And I was like, what is even proper English? Like, who decided? And I realized in high school that I was like, I had this rebellious part of me that wanted to know why I had to do the things people told me to do. Like, who said, but I never was like, quote, I wouldn't say brave enough to like speak up, but I was always like, I want to go and be a linguist. Forget being a CEO. I want to be a linguist. I want to know who said blue is blue and why can't blue be green? And why do I have to use these words in this way? Obviously, I never pursued that degree or that area, but it always fascinates me, is like, who got to decide and tell us like what was right and what was wrong and all of it, right? And these systems were all created before like any of us had really any say, but they were made by white men. And so even, when you talk about like, oh, people are like, oh, I feel like I'm behind, or even like financially, right? Is like, so I'm like, I'll be 40 in like 2 weeks. And I think about like, oh, I wish I had more retirement, right? Like, or, oh, I wish I had more money saved, or, oh, I wish I was like somewhere else, like further in my career. But like, these systems weren't made for us. So like you said earlier, right? We're like starting from ground zero. Like I didn't want to say we're probably like negative, like 5, if we're being honest, like because of all the healing and everything, just to get to a level playing field to even learn and know about it, right? Like that's where we're at now. Like we were able, like our parents were at like -5. we're now at like zero. And our kids luckily will be like a few steps higher up, right? Because we know enough and now we're educating them. But the truth is, there's still people who are at -5 who have no idea that there's like financial tools or legal tools that can like assist to make them like more aware and to get up to that point where they can pass on generational wealth. So, anyways, I think I went off on a tangent, but
Yeah, well, I like what you said because a lot of times when we are learning, so we're learning in our 30s or 40s, like we're already well into adulthood and we're learning these concepts and these things like investing and protecting your assets. And then it's also like paired with the guilt of not starting sooner. So then we just like are overwhelmed and keep putting it off because we're just like, oh, well, I should have started sooner and I don't know what I'm doing. So let me just like wait on this. And it sets us back even more. But then we're like, oh, well, we want to get our kids started in savings or investing. So like maybe we should learn and maybe we should like start for them. And then we like completely bypass ourselves. And then it's like this system that is like put in place, and it has like a colonistic root because like it's that sense of guilt that keeps us stuck. And so it's like, oh, well, here's this information, but you should have done it sooner, or you should have done it better, or anything else. And so how do you help people navigate through those emotions in order to make movement forward and the steps to secure themselves?
yeah, it's great that you say that because I think about the people who come into the law firm and they're like, "Oh, I have minor children. I need to protect my assets. I need to make sure that like they're taken care of if something happens to me," which is great, right? Like, absolutely, let's get that set up. But then they'll say, "Well, do you know a financial advisor? Do you know someone who can help me invest?" And so our first instinct, right, as parents is like, "Let me protect my children." But not enough so, and sometimes it's not enough like for us to invest in ourselves. But through my coaching program, actually, I just launched this last week, a couple weeks ago. I know we have promos going right now, but it's called Wealthy Her, right? And it's kind of like this 3-phase 3 month, 90 days, where we just kind of have this transformative experience where we look at first, right? Like your money stories. Like, what are your beliefs around money? What were you taught about money? What does it mean? And so a lot of it is like money mindset. And so that's kind of like the initial phase one, step one, where we're like, all right, let's look at where your thoughts are around money. And then looking at the shame and the guilt for not being where you're supposed to be or whatever it is that comes up for you. And then phase two, and this is like an ongoing process, right? So you go through phase 1, 2, and 3, and then you're gonna go back through 1, 2, and 3 at like a different level, right? And so phase two is building that financial foundation. Like, are you actually looking at your budget? Because people so many times are like, I don't have money to invest. I don't have enough. And it's like, well, where are you spending your money? And if you're not aware of where your money's going, you can't know if you have any left over to invest. And so we have them, sit down and we look at their financial foundation. Not, I don't like to call it budgeting, but like a money tracking system where they look at where their money is going, right? Giving it direction. It's just like kids, right? You need to give them direction and they actually appreciate it so they know and they feel guided and supported versus like, let me swipe and hope that it doesn't get declined, right? Or like, I don't know when my next payday is. And so really building that financial foundation. And then the third phase is kind of this, let's teach you how to make your money make more money for you. So whether you're investing $5, $10, whatever it is, you start now so that compound interest, right? That little snowball can start building up so that it becomes something bigger. And you'll be surprised at how quickly more money can accumulate once you've kind of taken all of these steps and you're very intentional with how you're spending. And I think one of the things sometimes is that people are, is that like, I don't have money. But it's like, are you spending $5 at Starbucks? Are you spending money eating out? Can you take just a little bit of that and put it elsewhere? Like, I'm not here to talk about like scarcity budgeting, right? Like you have to be super frugal. You can't have a life that you love. No, I'm very much an advocate of like have a life that you love, but be very intentional, right? Think about like the American dream. Our parents came here thinking that, you know, their American dream was one thing. And as, we have been here living here we realize, oh, our American dream is not so much the same, right? There's a little bit of differences. And for some people, maybe leaving the country, some people want to move out of the country, right? And their parents wanted to come here and buy property and things like that. So a lot of it is kind of deciding what your values are. What's your American dream? What are your ultimate goals? Because that's really step one, right? Like the beginning phase, like that's what we work on, is like getting to know yourself and how you want to be remembered and what your ultimate goals are. Because without that, there's no plan, there's no direction. And like your spending, your investing is also not going to have a plan. And so we kind of like work to do this like holistic healing with like money and like revolutionizing like how people or like women of color are, using money.
I get so hopeful hearing more conversations about money, and not just hearing more conversations about money, but like the conversations seem so attainable, and they're not um, rooted in guilt or power, um, like the power dynamics. Like I think back to when I was like working with my father, and I would like be scared to go to a bank or like scared to go to the lawyer because I'm just like, oh, well, they're like so unattainable and I'm not worthy to be like in this space. And yeah, I think about the mindset shifts that I've had to make in my own life and how healing that is, and just having conversations and someone to walk alongside you that is not going to shame you for where you're at in your life, and encourage you and like cheer you on as you are trying to gain knowledge, I think is huge. And I'm just so grateful when I hear the people that are like doing that work to help others. um, so you said you just like are um, being more vocal about your story and helping other people through like your program. Um, how would you like recommend people to even get started on this journey? Like, how did you, like, what was that first piece that you were like, okay, I need to do something? Where do I start?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to share. And I think I shared this a little bit where my story actually started when I was like in sixth grade. And I asked my mom to teach me how to write a check, right? Because I was like, I want to know how to manage money. And part of it was that my parents are not great money managers, right? Financial managers. They both have their own stories and healing that has to be done around like money, growing up so poor and like immigrant families. Like my grandmother was born during the depression, right? And so my dad coming from a family of like 8 and being here in a new country, and so they have their own healing that has to happen. But for me, I was like, oh, I need to know how to manage this because money is like a big deal, right? So I'm sure there were like conversations around finances when I was little that didn't feel very good. And they were just little things like even in 8th grade, right? So my dad and, my parents, I'm super grateful for them, right? But they have horrible spending habits. They didn't say no to us. Like we were considered quote unquote spoiled because my dad's goal was for us to never feel like we needed or wanted anything, right? Like he wanted us to always feel safe and like secure and, at his own detriment. Right. And so he was so focused on us and didn't do some of the, investing that he could have potentially done. But so when I was like in eighth grade, I was like, hey, dad, give me an allowance. Like, I only want you to give me this amount. He looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, give me $30 and that's it. And if I want to go to the movies with my friends, then I have to figure out how to use that money from like the whole week. So even like after school snacks or whatever it is, like that's all I would get. And obviously $30 last, that many years ago was a lot of money, but um it was one of those things where I was like, I wanted to learn financial management. But if you're an adult and you never had those, experiences, and you want to start, it really comes down to really getting clear around your finances and your spending and what comes up. So there's like a little exercise that I'll do with clients and ask them things like, if money was your lover, what would that relationship look like? Right? Like, is it one where you're like giving money attention? Are you desperate? Are you clingy? Are you ignoring it? Like, if that was a relationship, because a lot of like money is a neutral energy, right? It's whatever energy we give to it. So one is looking at like if your relationship with money, if money was your lover, what would that relationship look like? The other thing is obviously figuring out what your ultimate goals are. So if you want to just do like 90 days, right? Or I think a lot of the times people look at goals and financial goals as like very black and white. They're like, well, when I die, I want to leave my house like my like 5 properties. I want to have all this money, but it's so vague that they like God, universe, creator, whatever it is, that people believe in can't support you because they're like, I don't even know what that means. Like, are you sure? Like, you just want to be like super rich. Well, what does that mean? Like rich in love, rich with money? Like, what does that mean? Right. So you have to be able to like know because vagueness is not going to be helpful. Like, again, right. Going back to like planning and specificity. And so looking at your relationship with money and being very intentional about like, okay, when I die, if I have say 3 kids, I only have one and I have a stepson, but say I have 3 kids and I'm like, I want 3 properties. I want to be able to buy 3 properties and leave one to each of my children. Okay, cool. So how do we get there, right? And you reverse engineer it, just like anything else. Or if you say, for example, like I talk a lot about legacy, right? And that's how we met, right? At Jasmine's thing. And legacy is so huge, but it's so much more than just your money, right? Like I want people to like listen to these podcasts like down the line, or I want to create a fund for women who are survivors of domestic violence where like money is then used to help them get immediate help or long-term support so they never have to go back and they don't feel like finances are a reason why they have to go back, right? So long term, I'm like, I want to build a foundation. But what steps do I need to get there? Just like with the business, when you're building it out, like what steps? And so, same thing with like the wealth and like the building of it. You have to get very intentional with like where you even want to go, like where do you want to be at the end of the day? And the great thing is it doesn't have to all happen today, right? And I think that's the part of it is like the instant gratification, influencers, social media, everybody's like these people's lives are so great. That's the highlight reel. That's just the highlight reel. They're not telling you about the moments where they're like burnt out and super depressed and can't get off the floor because whatever, they have some crippling chronic disease. Like none of that is shared. It's all like, oh, I'm going to like Dubai or wherever it is this weekend, and next weekend I'll be somewhere else. But they may be in an abusive relationship that behind closed doors, like the finances may be great and they may get to go to these great places, but they're being super controlled and they have no freedom over, no self autonomy. And so part of it is like trying to cut out that noise and really just go inward. Like, I was like, this is getting very much more than just the financial practical side of things, but it's like go inward, figure out what you really want, and then find support, find a coach, find like, whether it's like a business, you're starting your business and you're like, there's nobody that looks like me in this business. Like Karina can, attest, right? And I can too. Like there are no brown people doing estate planning. Like there's a few more now, but I'm in a very white male dominated field and talking about finances. Like it's just not happening. Like, and so my next goal would be to get more Latinas from law school to do estate planning and start their own practices. So just putting that out there. If there's any future lawyers, let's talk. But it's really just, like knowing yourself on like so many levels, right? Like, and your most authentic self, not who you think you need to be or how you have to show up, but just like who you are and what's important to you. And then creating a plan and your life plan essentially on what that looks like. So much of it isn't actually about like the numbers and the investing. Well, and you have to just start with like whatever little bit you have. But so much more of it is like internal work and healing that has to happen.
I'm glad that you touch on that because a lot of times we just see the what we want, and then when we start working on it, we're just like, "Whoa, I need I need therapy. I need like this is much heavier than I expected it or thought." Um, so I am just appreciative when people are honest about that and also offer the support in order to get to point B. Like you need to go through all of this first before we get to the next point. And yeah, I think that's a lot of things that we learned as we're doing them, like this generation of um, entrepreneurs, grads, undergrads, higher ed lawyers, people that are in the corporate world are realizing all of these. And then because of social media, we can be more vocal and say, like, oh, well, this is what's going on and this is the reality. And I think because Instagram has been around for more than 10 years now, people are like, okay, we know that this is might not be the picture that is the reality. We're just seeing the pretty stuff. And I think it's been more common for us to realize that just because something seems like one way on the outside doesn't mean that it's necessarily like that on the inside. And yeah, I just appreciate when people are real about that, because I mean,
Well, and it's, and it's an ongoing journey, right? Like even just yesterday, I was laying in bed getting ready for Monday, right? And I said to my boyfriend, and I said, and my daughter's there with me. And there was like something in me where I was like, do you guys ever just feel like you just want to go shopping? Like you don't need anything, you don't want to buy anything, but you just want to go shopping to like spend money and like see what like goodies, like it's almost like that dopamine hit, right? Where my daughter was like, "Yeah, mommy." And I was like, "No, homegirl, I know. Like, you're my broke best friend. Like, if it was up to you, but I'm also trying to teach her financial, like, she's learning at a young age, right? Like, let's focus on experiences rather than things and blah, blah, blah. But I just like had this moment. I was like, I've been doing this work for so long, and there's still moments, it's almost like this weird like addiction, right? But it's not an addiction, it's just like what is so ingrained in what we're used to that I was like, I just want to go buy something. I don't know what it is or why. Like, and I'm sure if like maybe probably not, but if Instagram would have targeted me with like an amazing thing, then I'm like, oh, you know what, I really wanted that, like let me just go and buy it. And I was in that moment of like, I want to go, like, but it's an ongoing process. And so if there's times where you like slip up and you're like, dang it, I bought that Instagram ad thing and or that tick from the TikTok store, I knew I shouldn't have. But also, I think the other part is, and we work on this in my program, is redefining our relationship with debt. Because I think as immigrants, right, there's so much like no credit cards, no debt. And I'm like, but the really rich people are leveraging this debt and using other people's money. They're not even using their own money. Their money stays in, making more money. They're leveraging someone else's to keep buying more stuff. Like, what are we doing? So there's like a whole other part that we talk about there, but it's just really redefining these stories and beliefs that we have. But it's like, it's not this just straight line, just like entrepreneurship, right? It's not just linear line. This goes up and down and you're feeling all the feelings, and you're going to need so much therapy, not because like it's, oh, let me invest my $5. No, it's because of like other things that are deeper rooted, right? Like your relationship with money goes so much deeper into like your worthiness and like how much you love yourself and things like that. Like it goes real deep. It's not just about the dollar.
so with that said, what encouragement or advice would you have for the next generation, like your daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for all the parents that are listening, right? Like teach them now. Like they're not too young. And one thing that a coach told me once was that if you don't teach them, somebody else will. So when they're, if they're on social media already, if they're scrolling TikTok or YouTube shorts or whatever the heck is out there, and I think that the younger generations have moved off of Instagram, but, uh, but like TikTok, all of those things, like, if you're not teaching them, they're going to be learning from somewhere else, right? And so if their focus is like, oh, let me buy, I think the latest thing my daughter showed me on TikTok was like a burr basket, where it's like you put like a basket together with candles and blankets and all kinds of stuff, right? And they want you to go to their TikTok shop because they're going to sell you that stuff and those people are going to make money and blah blah blah. So I'm teaching her now, and actually I got her an app. So it's called Go Henry. I have no affiliation with it because it is just an app that I found, but I love it because I can set an allowance for her, right? So I'll just give a quick example. Is she's 8, so we give her $1 for every year old she is, right? So she automatically gets $1 flat fee. And then she has chores that she has to do. And she'll go into the app, or I'll go into my app and check them off as she does them. And she gets like 10 cents for sweeping, right? Or like 10 cents for making her bed. And so at the end of the week, if she does all her chores and with her $1 flat fee, she'll get $8. Two of those dollars are automatically saved. So a lot of it is even for us, right? You have that paycheck, or, you get paid. send a certain amount to savings or investing or wherever you want to set it up. But so she's learning like, okay, I only have this much money to spend. If I go to the store and I don't have it, then I can't buy it. I'm going to have to wait. And so it helps reduce the instant gratification. And so teaching our kids now. But if you're in a place where you're like, I don't even know, then you have to focus on yourself first. And that way you can then teach your kids, who will then teach your grandkids, right? And it goes down the line where in maybe 5 generations, they're going to be the ones who have all of these investments that they're passing on for like even further generations, right? And that's how that generational wealth is like
Yes, I'm giving you all the snaps for that. I hope everyone is listening, because
created.
that is great advice. So, as we're coming up to the end of the year, are there any big goals or anything that you're excited about?
Oh, so I have my program. I'm really excited about that. I have, I don't know, I just really love the space that I'm in. But if you're interested in kind of the program, we have Wealthy Her, and that's all over my IG and socials. There's information there. We have a retreat that we're doing in Bali next year, in October. And actually, I've had such like great like feedback that people want to do, like they want another one. So I may throw in an extra one next year. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, I just really am loving like the space that I'm in right now. And I think that's one of it is like just being completely present because yes, I have big goals, but knowing that like the journey is the part that like I just really want to enjoy right now. So
And where can people find you? So share your website, all your socials.
yeah. So if you go to carmenrosas.com, all over socials, it's just I am Carmen Rosas. If you type in on Google Carmen Rosas attorney, everything will come up. I'm the only Carmen Rosas attorney so far. Knock on wood. Maybe somebody else one day will be too. But I'm all over the place. But I am Carmen Rosas is where you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and then LinkedIn is just Carmen Rosas. And then website carmenrosas.com. If you're looking for estate planning, law firm stuff, it's yourlegacyprotectionfirm.com. And then my coaching, again, is Empower Yourself is my company. But if you just type in my name, again, that's probably the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. Well, yes, I will be linking all of those in the show notes. And I am just so thankful for your time and for you sharing your story and all the wisdom and advice that you gave today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for this platform. You have had such amazing, guests on here. So I'm honored to be featured as well. And I love the work that you're doing. So important too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. And hopefully we'll get together again in person soon because I just love your presence and I love like hanging out in person.
Thank you. Yes, me too. We have to collaborate. So stay tuned. This is our
Yes.
accountability. Like we will do some kind of collaboration in the next year.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much and I'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
I am so glad I met and connected with Carmen. Look out for a collab from us because it's coming. We're bringing the Midwest and the East Coast together. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot to post on Instagram and tag at Elevating La Cultura or send me a DM. You can also comment on this YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating la cultura. All right. Enjoy the rest of the day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Adios.